But like any new anvil, the edges are a little crisper than you probably want for forging. It would be easier to introduce cold shuts and stress risers in your work that will eventually lead to failure. Plus, it's a lot easier to chip the edges of an anvil if you leave them fairly square. Now, this isn't sharp enough to cut yourself. This is better than some of the anvils out there, but it still needs to be dressed. So the first thing I'm going to do is dress this anvil and dress the edges of the hardy hole so it's a little safer and more friendly to work on. I started this with a 60 grit flap disc, finished with a 120 grit flap disc. Probably didn't take 10 minutes to do the whole thing. Remember, you can always come back and do more later, but you can't put it back on very easily. So don't get too carried away unless you really know what you want. I marked the anvil off into some zones for different radiuses because you don't always want the same thing. Up near the step and the horn, I have a fairly aggressive radius just in a short area. Then I've got a big area right over the waist of the anvil where most of the forging will happen that is nicely radius but not overly aggressive. A little bit less radius towards the tail, and then right on the tail it's almost left perfectly square, just enough to knock the sharp edges off.